Waylon's house was always empty on Tuesdays. Nancy was working at the insurance company, my son was late at his car dealership, and the grandkids were at school until the evening. I'd come over to clean up even though they didn't ask. I liked feeling useful, especially now that they were inviting me to family dinners less and less often. Grandma gets tired of the noise, Waylon told the grandkids, though I never complained. That Tuesday, I was dusting my son's office when a folder slid off a shelf. I bent over, wrinkling my aching knee. The years had not been spared. A document with a large Harbor Life Insurance logo peeked out of the opened folder. I hadn't intended to read his business papers, but my name in bold print made me stop. Martha Clampett, the insured. Sum insured, $500,000. Beneficiary, Waylon Clampett. I reread the document 3 times, trying to figure out when I'd signed such a policy. The fine print was blurring before my eyes. The date of the policy was April 27th. That was only a month ago. I didn't remember signing anything like that. Of course, my memory sometimes fails me, but not that badly. At the bottom of the page was a signature. Mine, no doubt. Or was it? Almost mine? I squinted. The curl of the M wasn't the way I usually wrote. I pulled an old check out of my pocket and compared it. Definitely someone had tried hard, but it wasn't my hand. A door slammed in the yard and I flinched. Quickly, I returned the document to the folder to the shelf. My heart was pounding like crazy as I went back to rubbing the book spines. No one had come in. The neighbor's cat must have knocked over the garbage can. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. "What's going on, Waylon?" I whispered into the emptiness of the office. My modest pension and a small house on Cherry Street were the only things I had. The house had come from Harold, my late husband, who died 15 years ago. Waylon was 25 when his father passed away. He got over his grief faster than I did, went to work. Now he's in his 40s. Sometimes I think he's aged before I have, always scowling, preoccupied with money, with bald spots and a budding belly. I picked up the washed dishes and walked out of my son's house, locking the door carefully. Bisbee greeted me with bright sunshine and a dry wind. Many people find the April heat in Arizona unbearable, but I'd gotten used to it in the 40 years I'd lived here. My cabin was a 10-minute walk away. I walked slowly, thinking about what I'd seen. Maybe Waylon just wanted to keep me safe. But why hadn't he said so? And why did the signature look forged? "Miss Clampett," a ringing voice called out to me. I turned around. Loretta Mills jumped out of her old Ford, waving a paper bag. My neighbor, a 23-year-old nurse at the local clinic, was always in a hurry. "I got fresh buns from Johnson's Bakery," she said, holding out the bag. "I got some cinnamon rolls, just the way you like them." "Thank you, dear." I accepted the treat. "You're too good to me." Loretta came into my life 2 years ago when she moved into the house across the street. Young, energetic, she'd quickly taken charge of me as if I were her ward. At first, I was annoyed by this obsessive care, but gradually I got used to it. Loretta became the only person I talked to every day. She stopped by to see if everything was okay, brought groceries when my feet hurt, and helped with the chores that were getting harder and harder for me. "Did Mr. Clampett come to see you this week?" Loretta asked, squinting into the sun. "Waylon? No, he's busy." I tried to keep my voice lighthearted. "He's got his own business, you know." "Of course," Loretta nodded, but there was something like judgment in her eyes. "It's just that he promised to fix your leaky sink a month ago." "I hired a plumber," I replied. "I shouldn't bother Waylon about anything." Loretta pressed her lips together, but didn't say anything. She'd never criticized my son directly, but I could sense her disapproval. Maybe she was right. Waylon had long ago stopped dropping by just for no reason. He usually showed up when he needed something, or on those rare days when Nancy decided it was time to have a family dinner. "Okay, I gotta run." Loretta glanced at her watch. "Don't forget your blood pressure pills, okay?" "I will," I nodded, even though I knew my blood pressure was fine. Dr. Patterson had lowered the dosage at my last appointment, but Loretta didn't know that. Neither did Waylon. At home, I put the kettle on and pulled out the signed receipt I'd found. The forgery was skillful, but definitely a forgery. Why would Waylon insure me for that amount of money without my knowledge? The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Mom? My son's voice sounded strained. Have you forgotten that we're expecting you for dinner tonight? Is it tonight? I really didn't remember the invitation. I told you on Sunday. He sounded annoyed. Nancy made your favorite lasagna. I'm sorry, darling. Of course I'll be there. I looked at my watch. At 6 o'clock, as usual? Yes. And, are you taking your meds? The doctor said I shouldn't skip it. I clenched the phone. What kind of medication is he talking about? Dr. Patterson only prescribed me blood pressure pills. Of course, I lied again. Don't worry about it. I hung up the phone and sat down at the kitchen table. Something was definitely wrong. The insurance policy, the forged signature, medication I didn't know about. At 6 p.m., I stood on the doorstep of my son's house. Nancy opened the door with a strained smile. Martha, it's so good you could come, she said, making no attempt to hug me. Come in, dinner is almost ready. The house was too big for a family of 4, 3 stories with a pool in the backyard and a 3-car garage. Nancy was proud of every square foot, especially the kitchen, where everything gleamed stainless steel. My grandchildren, 12-year-old Jason and 10-year-old Emily, sat tucked away on their cell phones. They barely looked up when I walked in. Hi, Grandma, Jason mumbled. Hello, sweetheart. I kissed the top of his head. He wrinkled his nose and pulled away. Emily let herself be hugged, but immediately returned to her device. Waylon came out of the study, holding a glass of whiskey. Mom, he nodded. Are you feeling all right? You look tired. I'm fine, I replied, watching his reaction carefully. It's just a lot to do around the house. You shouldn't overdo it. He shook his head. Nancy and I talked about it. Maybe you should think about a care home. There's a great place in Tucson, an upscale boarding home for seniors. Very good reviews. I froze with my mouth half open. An elite boarding house? Waylon, I'm doing fine on my own, I said firmly. And I like my house. Sure, Mom, he took a sip of whiskey. But with your health problems. What health problems? I interrupted. A little blood pressure and arthritis. Nothing unusual for my age. Nancy stepped in, setting the steaming lasagna on the table. Waylon talked mostly at dinner. About his business, about how hard it was to find good employees, about the new car he had his eye on. Nancy nodded in all the right places. The kids picked at their plates in silence. Mom, you haven't eaten much, Waylon remarked. No appetite? No, I'm just not very hungry, I smiled at Nancy. The lasagna's delicious, though. At least drink some water, Waylon stood up. You need more fluids, the doctor said. He walked to the kitchen and I heard water pouring from the filter. Deciding to help serve dessert, I got up and headed for the kitchen as well. As I lingered in the doorway for a moment, I saw Waylon look back and pull a small bag of white powder out of his pocket, quickly pouring it into the glass of water he'd obviously been preparing for me. He stirred the water with his finger, dissolving the powder. I retreated into the dining room, my heart pounding like crazy. Waylon, my son, had just put something in the water he was about to give me. Waylon, the Waylon I'd raised alone after Harold died. Waylon, for whom I'd given up my career, my move to Phoenix, my second marriage. I quickly walked back to the table and sat down, trying to keep my hands from shaking. When Waylon returned and placed the glass in front of me, I smiled and thanked him. I'm sorry, darling, I added, but I have a stomach ache. You know, age. I should probably refrain from drinking for now. But you need fluids, Waylon insisted, moving the glass closer to me, especially with your blood pressure. A little later, I pushed the glass away. I want to finish this wonderful lasagna first. Nancy, you have to give me the recipe. Nancy smiled weakly, and I noticed her glance quickly at the glass, then at Waylon. She knew. Whatever Waylon had slipped me, his wife knew. Of course, Martha, she said. I'll write it down for you. The rest of the dinner was spent in tense conversation. I was careful to stay away from the water glass, distracting everyone by talking about the neighbors, the weather, anything. When it was time for dessert, I cited a full stomach. Wrap me up a slice to go, I asked. I'll eat it for breakfast tomorrow. You didn't even drink any water, Waylon said, not hiding his annoyance. Oh, I forgot. I picked up the glass and pretended to drink it, but stopped. You know what? I have to go to the bathroom. I'll be back in a minute. In the bathroom, I locked the door and poured the poisoned water down the toilet. Then I filled a glass with fresh tap water. When I got back to the table, I took a few sips in front of Waylon. It's good, I smiled. You have a good filter. Waylon stared at me intently, as if expecting some kind of reaction. I endured his gaze, continuing to smile. Soon I said goodbye, citing fatigue. Waylon insisted on driving me home, even though it was only a 10-minute walk. He was silent in the car, and I didn't start a conversation either. What could I say? Why did you put something in my water? When we pulled up to my house, Waylon turned off the engine. Mom, I'm serious about the boarding house, he said, looking straight ahead. It's not just a fad. Nancy and I are worried about you. I know, honey, I replied, trying to make my voice sound warm. And I appreciate your concern. But I'm doing fine on my own for now. And Loretta comes by often to help. Loretta? He frowned. Your neighbor? Mom, you barely know her. You shouldn't rely on strangers like that. She's a good girl. I put my hand on his shoulder. She's a good girl. I put my hand on his shoulder. Waylon shook his head. I don't care. Think about it. For me. I will, I promised, knowing it was a lie. He leaned over and kissed my cheek. A dry, formal kiss. Nothing more than a gesture of politeness. Good night, Mom. Call me if you need anything. I will. I got out of the car. Thanks for dinner. Tell Nancy it was delicious. I watched his car drive away and felt a chill run down my spine. Something was very, very wrong in my family, and I had to find out what it was. I stayed up all night. I lay staring at the ceiling, trying to find another explanation for what I'd seen. Maybe Waylon was supplementing with vitamins, tasteless protein, something useful he was embarrassed to say directly. But why fake insurance? Why talk about the nursing home when I was doing just fine on my own? In the morning, I sat down at my desk and wrote down everything that had happened. The insurance policy is in my name. Talking about feeling sick, which I wasn't. White powder in a glass of water. Nancy's knowledge of what was going on. It all added up to a frightening picture, but I needed more information. For the next 3 days, I tried to act normal. Watered the flowers in the tiny flower bed in front of the house. I went grocery shopping at the corner store. I said hello to my neighbors. No one would have guessed that every morning I woke up with a heaviness in my chest and a question. How long has my son wanted to get rid of me? On Friday, Waylon called. How are you, Mom? His voice sounded strained. Do you feel anything unusual? I'm fine. I tried to sound cheerful. I'm going to bake an apple pie. Maybe I'll drop it off this weekend. Pause. We'd better stop by your place, he said finally. Sunday, see how you're doing. And don't bother with the baking. We'll bring dessert from the pastry shop. Okay, honey, I agreed. I'll be waiting. As I hung up the phone, I thought about it. Waylon wanted to see if what he'd slipped me had worked. He seemed annoyed when I told him I felt fine, like it was bad news. That same day, I went to my son's house again. I had the key for cleaning. I usually came on Tuesdays, but I decided to break the routine. I needed to learn more. The house greeted me with silence. I took a quick look around the kitchen, then moved on to Waylon's office. The insurance folder was still in the same place. I began methodically looking through desk drawers, bookshelves, and cabinets. In the third drawer of the desk, under a stack of papers, I found a small box. Inside were blisters of pills and several packets of white powder, like the kind Waylon used to put in my water. None of the packets had labels or writing on them, just pills in different shapes and colors. I pulled out my old cell phone that Waylon had given me 3 years ago. He thought I barely knew how to use it, turn it on, answer calls, and occasionally text. But I've learned more than he realized. Loretta showed me how to take pictures, use the internet, even send emails. So I took pictures of the contents of the box, every blister, every pouch. Then I carefully put everything back in its place, being careful not to disturb the order. As I continued my search, I found brochures about nursing homes in the closet. A boarding house in Tucson was circled in red marker. In the margin, someone, Waylon or Nancy, had written, "The most affordable option." In another folder, I found printouts of bank statements. Things hadn't been going well for Waylon for the past 6 months. Large cash withdrawals, mortgage delays, credit cards nearly maxed out. That explained his obsession with money and his constant talk about the difficulties of business. I took a few more pictures and left the office. I looked around the bedroom but found nothing of interest. In Emily's room, I lingered at the noteboard. Hanging among the pictures of friends and class schedules was a sheet titled, "When I Grow Up." Item 3 read, "Sell Grandma's house and buy a Ferrari." I felt like I'd been kicked in the butt. Even my grandchildren were already dividing up my possessions. As I was cleaning the living room, I heard the key turn in the lock. My heart jumped to my throat. Someone had come home early. "Mom?" Waylon's voice. "What are you doing here?" I tried to smile as naturally as possible. "I thought I'd clean up today instead of Tuesday. I have an appointment with Dr. Patterson on Tuesday." Waylon frowned. "You didn't say you had an appointment, did I?" I kept dusting off the coffee table. "Just a routine checkup. Nothing serious." He looked at me carefully. "Would you like something to drink? Water? Tea?" "No, thanks." I shook my head. "I'm almost done." "You look chipper," he said, not hiding his disappointment. "I feel fine," I confirmed. "Even my knees have been hurting less lately." Waylon nodded, but I could see he wasn't happy. Something wasn't going the way he'd planned. "You're back early," I said. "Yeah, I had to pick up some paperwork." He headed toward the office. "I'll let you get out of my way. When you're done, just shut the door." I continued cleaning, listening to the sounds from the office. A desk drawer opened, papers rustled. Waylon was checking to see if I'd touched his stuff. 15 minutes later, he came out, holding a folder. "I'm off, Mom." He stopped in the doorway. "Don't overwork yourself, okay? And don't forget about Sunday. We'll be there around 2. "Sure, honey." I waved my hand. "Have a good day." When the door closed behind him, I sank heavily onto the couch. My heart was still pounding. What am I doing? Spying on my own son, suspecting him of trying to poison him? This is crazy. Maybe I really am losing my mind. But the facts spoke for themselves. Fake insurance, mystery drugs, powder in the water, talk of a nursing home, Waylon's financial problems. I finished cleaning and came home feeling squeezed like a lemon. The day was drawing to a close when there was a knock at the door. "Miss Clampett." Loretta stood on the doorstep with a bag of groceries. "I drove by the supermarket and thought you might need some milk. I also bought that cheese you like." "Thank you, dear." I let her in. "You're very thoughtful." "It's nothing." She went into the kitchen and started sorting out her purchases. "How are you today? I saw you coming back from your son's. It was a heavy bag." "It's nothing." I put the kettle on. "Would you like some tea?" "I'd love some." Loretta sat down at the table. "You look tired." Is everything all right? I wondered. Could I trust her with my suspicions? She seemed so sincere, so caring. But these were my family problems. My son, my pain. "Just cleaned a lot today," I finally said. "Waylon's house is big." Loretta frowned. "Why don't they hire a cleaning lady? You don't have to work hard." "I like being helpful." I poured the tea into cups. "Besides, it's an excuse to see the grandchildren." "Were they home?" "No, not today." Loretta shook her head. "You know, Miss Clampett, I think they take you for granted. You do so much for them, and they—" She paused as if realizing she was crossing a line. "Sorry, none of my business." She added quickly, "It's okay, sweetheart." I smiled weakly. You didn't say anything I hadn't thought of myself. We drank our tea in comfortable silence. I pondered how right Loretta was. My family did take me for granted. Waylon never once asked me what I wanted, what I'm afraid of, what my dreams are. I became a problem for him to solve. A burden I could get rid of for $500,000 in insurance. "Loretta," I began gently, "you work in a hospital. Have you ever come across any, unusual drugs? The kind that look like regular pills but are misused?" She raised her eyebrows in surprise. "What do you mean? You mean drugs?" "No, not exactly." I shook my head. "More like drugs that can cause strange symptoms. Weakness, drowsiness, confusion, maybe even mimic dementia." Loretta set the cup aside. "Why do you ask? Has someone suggested such medication to you?" "No, no," I hastened to reassure her. "I was just reading an article on the internet about how some elderly people are falling victim to of improper treatment. That wasn't exactly a lie. I had actually searched the internet for information after I discovered Wayland's pills, but all I found were general articles about scams against seniors. Yes, unfortunately, it happens, Loretta nodded. There are drugs that, in the wrong doses, can cause symptoms similar to dementia or Alzheimer's, some tranquilizers, sleeping pills. There are even cases of relatives intentionally giving such drugs to elderly people to gain control of their estates. My heart squeezed. So I'm not crazy. It really does happen. It's horrible, I whispered. Very, Loretta agreed. That's why you should always check what you're taking. If your doctor prescribes a new medication, don't hesitate to ask questions. And if you suddenly feel something unusual after eating or drinking with someone else, contact me right away. I will, I promised, feeling a lump in my throat. We talked some more about the hospital, about Loretta's patients, about the weather, the usual safe topics. But inside me, everything trembled with the realization that my worst suspicions might be true. When Loretta left, I pulled out my phone and looked at the pictures I'd taken. Clear shots of pills and powders, proof that I wasn't making it up. I wanted to tell Loretta the truth, show her those pictures. But something held me back. Fear of implicating her in this dark story, or shame to admit that my own son, my own flesh and blood, might be trying to slowly kill me. I sat in the silence of my little house, staring at the screen of my phone, and felt like I trusted this young woman, someone I'd known for only 2 years, more than I trusted the son I'd raised, the one I'd given my whole life to. On Sunday, Waylon and his family arrived at 2 sharp. Nancy brought cheesecake from the pastry shop, the kids their phones and bored faces. I made the tea and set out the best service. I played the role of hostess, caring mother and grandmother. "How are you feeling, Mom?" Waylon asked, watching me closely. "Fine," I smiled. "I'm even thinking about joining a yoga group for seniors. There's one at the community center." Nancy and Waylon looked at each other. "Yoga?" his son interjected. "Are you sure it's safe in your condition?" "What condition, honey?" I flapped my eyelashes innocently. "Dr. Patterson says I'm in great shape for my age. But your memory lapses," Nancy interjected. "And the weakness. You complained about it yourself last month." I didn't remember complaining about anything like that. They made up symptoms that weren't there. They created the image of a frail old woman in need of care. "You must be confused about something," I said softly. "I feel better than I have in years." Waylon set the cup on the table with such force that the tea spilled out. "Mom, you don't understand your own condition." His voice became harder. "Nancy and I have noticed how you're changing. You're forgetting things, getting confused. That's normal at your age, but you need care. Special care," Nancy said. "There are nurses at the boarding house to make sure you take your medications. There are doctors on site, and there are so many activities, bingo, a knitting club, movies in the evenings." "Sounds wonderful," I topped up their tea, "for someone who really needs that kind of care. But I prefer my own home." "Grandma's stubborn," Jason muttered, still on the phone. "She just doesn't know what's best for her," Emily said in her small adult tone. I looked at the grandchildren. When had they gotten so cold? What had Waylon and Nancy told them about me? "Maybe we should at least go see it." Waylon suggested it. "Just for information, we could go next weekend." "Maybe," I smiled, not saying yes or no. "Let's try the cheesecake, shall we? It looks delicious." While I cut the dessert, Waylon went into the kitchen and came back with a glass of water. "You need to drink more, Mom," he said, setting the glass next to my plate. "You know what the doctor said?" I didn't know what the doctor said because the last time I'd seen him was 3 months ago, and all he'd said was that I was healthy for my age. But I nodded. "Thank you, darling." I sipped my sip cautiously, watching Waylon's reaction carefully. He kept his eyes on me. I set the glass aside and continued the conversation as if nothing had happened. When no one was looking, I discreetly switched glasses my own with Waylon's, who was drinking plain water. After the family left, I poured out the contents of both glasses. I didn't want to take any chances. Waylon seemed annoyed, almost angry, as he said goodbye. I could see the impatience in his eyes, frustration that his plan wasn't working. He expected to see me weak, disoriented, ready to agree to anything he suggested. Instead, there was a vivacious woman sitting in front of him talking about yoga. I stood at the window, watching my son's car receding, and thought the game was getting dangerous. Waylon was clearly in a hurry. He needed money, and the $500,000 in insurance was probably going to solve his financial problems. But first, he had to get rid of me without anyone suspecting anything wrong. I stared out the window and thought I trusted Loretta, whom I'd only known for 2 years, far more than I trusted my own child. But I still couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. Was I afraid of dragging her into this nightmare? Or was I just not ready to say the dreaded words, "My son is trying to kill me," out loud? Bisbee's phone book was thin. Few people in our town had changed numbers in decades. I flipped through the ragged pages, stopping at the letter T. Eunice Tucker. We hadn't spoken to each other in almost 5 years, since she'd moved to the west side of town. We had once been close friends. Our husbands had worked together in the mine, and then, when they both left, we'd supported each other in our loneliness. I dialed the number, feeling my fingers shaking. After the fourth ring, I was about to hang up when a husky voice answered on the other end. "Hello? Who is this?" "Eunice? It's Martha Clampett." Pause. "Martha? God, it's been ages. What's happened?" Just the way I remembered Eunice, straightforward, unflappable. "I need your help," I said quietly. "Like a nurse. Is there something wrong with your health?" There was a professional note in Eunice's voice. "Not really. Can we meet? In person. It's a delicate matter." Another pause. "Come on over. Do you know my new address?" "No, but I'll find it." The cab cost $20 a waste on my modest budget, but I didn't want to ask Loretta for a ride. The last thing I wanted to do was explain where I was going and why. Eunice's house was a small one-story structure with a neat garden. She met me at the door, still tall and gaunt, but her hair was graying and her wrinkles deeper. "Come in," she said with a wave of her hand. "Do you want tea?" "If it's not too much trouble." I nodded, walking into the living room. Eunice disappeared into the kitchen and I looked around. There were pictures everywhere, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. A big, noisy family. I felt a prick of envy. So Eunice came back with a tray. "What's up? You don't look like you're dying." I smiled involuntarily. Eunice had always been like that, direct to the point of rudeness, but that's what I liked about her. "I think they're trying to poison me," I said, surprised at my own calmness. Eunice froze with the teapot in her hand. "I beg your pardon?" "My son, Waylon. I saw him slipping something into the water he was going to give me, and I found some strange drugs in his possession, unlabeled." Eunice slowly put the kettle on. "That's a serious accusation, Martha." "I know." I pulled out my phone. "That's why I took a picture of what I found. You've been head nurse at City Hospital for nearly 30 years. I thought maybe you'd recognize this." I handed her the phone. Eunice took it, put on her glasses, and started looking through the pictures. Her face grew more and more grim. "These little white round ones are lorazepam, a sedative. Pretty strong." She flipped through the photos. "This one's orange, looks like quinopril for blood pressure. In high doses, it causes dizziness, weakness. The blue capsules could be Donormal, sleeping pills." She continued listing, leafing through the scans. Some pills she couldn't identify exactly, but the overall picture was ominous. "And the white powder?" I asked when she got to the last photo. Eunice shook her head. "It's hard to tell from the photo. Could be a pulverized drug. Could be a mixture. Can't tell without lab analysis." She handed me back my phone and took off her glasses. "Martha, if someone's giving all this to one person, it's a very dangerous combination, especially to an elderly person. It can cause confusion, memory loss, weakness, coordination problems." "Lethal?" My voice sounded strangely calm. "Not directly, but it could cause complications that could lead to death. A fall, sleep apnea, respiratory arrest. And if you take it long enough, kidney failure, liver failure. A slow death that everyone would consider natural for someone your age." I closed my eyes. It's one thing to suspect, but it's another to get confirmation. "Why would your son do this?" Eunice asked, looking at me carefully. $100,000 of insurance," I answered. "And my house. He's in financial difficulties." Eunice swore in an unfeminine miner's way. Did you go to the police? With what? With pictures of the pills you found in his house? Suspicions? I have no proof. You can get tested. If he had time to give you any of it. I didn't drink the water. I shook my head. I avoid drinking anything he offers. I'm still playing his game, but by my own rules. Eunice pressed her lips together. It's a dangerous game, Martha. I know. I sipped my tea. But I have to see how far he's willing to go. We talked for a while. The birds were chirping outside the window, and Eunice's neighbor was mowing the lawn. A normal day in Bisbee, and we were discussing an attempted murder. You've always been stubborn, Eunice sighed. If you don't want to go to the police, at least be careful. Don't eat or drink anything your family gives you, and find a witness, someone who knows what's going on in case. She didn't finish the sentence. Now you do, I said. Yeah, but I live across town, someone closer. A neighbor, a friend? I thought of Loretta. Could I bring her into this? Maybe, I said uncertainly. Thank you, Eunice. I knew I could count on you. In 35 years of friendship, this is the first time you've asked for help, she grumbled. And even in a situation like this. Call me every day, do you understand? If you don't, I'll come check on you. I hugged her goodbye. Hard as a rock, Eunice. She was always stronger than me. On the way home, I thought about what I'd learned. Waylon wasn't just trying to get rid of me for money. He had an elaborate plan to slowly undermine my health, make me look like I was senile, put me in a nursing home where I would fade away quietly, unwanted by anyone. And he gets the money and his freedom. When I got home, Loretta was waiting for me on the porch. Miss Clampett! I knocked, but you weren't home. I was just leaving. I went to visit an old friend, I said, unlocking the door. Come in, darling. Nothing urgent. Loretta followed me in. I just wanted to see how your family's Sunday visit went. I set my bag on the table. The usual. Tea? Coffee? Nothing, thank you. She sat down on the edge of the sofa. You look upset. Is something wrong? I looked at her. Young, sincere, concerned about me for no gain. The contrast with Waylon and Nancy was stark. Waylon wants to send me to a nursing home, I said, sinking into a chair. Loretta frowned. But why? You're doing fine on your own, and if you need help, I'm always here for you. He says I'm getting absent-minded. I'm forgetful. That I need constant care. Nonsense, Loretta exclaimed. I see you every day. You're in better shape than most of my peers. I smiled weakly. Thank you, dear. But Waylon insists. What are you going to do? I sighed. I don't know, the situation is, more complicated than it seems. Loretta moved closer, took my hand. Miss Clampett, what's going on? You can trust me. Maybe it was fatigue after talking to Eunice, or maybe it was just the need to share the weight I was carrying alone. But I began to speak. Slowly at first, choosing my words, then faster and faster. About insurance, about the powder in the water at dinner, about how I poured it out in the toilet, about the medication I'd found, about the conversation with Eunice. Loretta listened without interrupting. Her eyes grew wider and wider. Oh my God, she whispered when I was done. This is horrible. We have to go to the police. With what? I repeated the question Eunice had asked. I have no proof. The photographs. Don't prove he was going to use those drugs on me. He could say they were his drugs, or Nancy's, or that I'm making it up because I'm getting dementia. Loretta clenched her teeth. Then we need to gather evidence, record him, catch him red-handed when he slips something into your food or drink again. I shook my head. He'll be more careful. Already he suspects something is wrong. I'm supposed to look sick, weak, and instead I'm talking about yoga. Yoga! Loretta smiled involuntarily. I told him I wanted to join a group for seniors. You should have seen the look on his face. We both laughed, but the laughter quickly died down. What are you going to do? Loretta asked seriously. I leaned back in my chair. Keep watching for now, and gather information. Maybe I'll be able to find something more concrete. It's dangerous, Loretta shook her head. If he realizes that you know. She didn't finish the sentence, but we both knew what she meant. I'll be careful, I promised. And now I have you and Eunice. You know what's going on. Loretta nodded decisively. I'll come by every day. And if you don't answer the phone, I'll call the police right away. I don't think he'll go for anything more direct, I said. He wants me to look natural. Otherwise, the insurance won't pay out. Whatever, Loretta was adamant. No compromise when it comes to your safety. Her concern touched me to the core. We'd only known each other for 2 years, but she cared about me more than my own son. Why are you so good to me, Loretta? I asked quietly. She looked at me in surprise. What kind of question was that? Because you are a wonderful person. Kind, wise, with a great sense of humor. And because it's the right thing to do, to take care of people. But we're not even related. So? She shrugged. Family isn't just blood. Family is people who love you and care about you. I felt a lump come to my throat. All these years I'd clung to the idea of family. Waylon, my grandchildren. Sacrificing myself, trying to be useful, not to be a burden. And what have I gotten in return? Coldness, irritation, and ultimately, betrayal. Miss Clampett? Loretta leaned toward me in concern. Are you crying? I didn't notice the tears running down my cheeks. I'm sorry, dear. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. It's just too much. Loretta hugged me tight, for real. Not the polite imitation of a hug I'd gotten from Nancy at family gatherings. Not the condescending pat on the shoulder Waylon had given me. We'll get through this, she said firmly. Together. I won't let him hurt you. In that moment, I realized that this was what a real relationship was supposed to look like. Not obligations caused by bloodlines. Not forced visits on Sundays. But genuine care and a desire to protect. Thank you, I whispered. For everything. You're welcome. Loretta pulled away and looked earnestly into my eyes. Now let's think about how to proceed. What did Waylon say when he suggested the nursing home? That they wanted to take me there this weekend, just to see it. And you said yes? Not exactly. I said maybe. Loretta thought about it. If you said no abruptly, he might suspect something wrong. On the other hand, it's dangerous to go there. Who knows what he's planning? I've thought about that. I nodded. Maybe I should do it, but with someone to go with me. Someone I trust. I could go, Loretta offered at once. Say you need moral support. He won't be happy, I warned him. Waylon doesn't like it when his plans are interrupted. All the better, Loretta said, steel in her voice. Let him know you're not alone. We talked for another hour going over our options, how to behave, what to say, how to gather evidence without putting ourselves in danger. When Loretta finally left, promising to check back tomorrow, I was left sitting in the chair thinking, in one day, my life had been turned upside down. In the morning, I was just an older woman suspecting something wrong. Now I knew for sure. My son was trying to slowly kill me. And I had allies, real, sincere, willing to help. The phone rang, interrupting my musings. Waylon's number. Mom? Are you home? Yes, honey. I tried to keep my voice normal. Is something wrong? No, just checking on you. He sounded a little too chipper. How are you feeling after our visit? Fine. I put the phone on speaker and put it on the table. Let him talk and I would listen, really listen to what was behind his words. No weakness? No dizziness? Not the slightest, I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. I even went to visit Eunice Tucker. Remember her? We were friends when your father was alive. Pause. Oh yes, I remember. How far away is that? Across town. I took a cab. A cab? I could hear the surprise in his voice. Mom, you could have asked me to drive you. I didn't want to bother you. You're a busy man. Another pause. I imagined him frowning, trying to figure out why his plan wasn't working. About the boarding house, he started. Yeah, I thought about that, I interrupted. We could go this weekend, but I want Loretta to come with me. Who? My roommate. She's a nurse at the city hospital. She helps me around the house a lot. Why would you take a roommate? The irritation in his voice was subtle, but I could hear it. It makes me feel better, I said simply. She knows about medical issues. She can ask the right questions about care. Nancy and I can ask all the right questions, Waylon countered. This is a family matter, Mom. I insist, I said, my voice hardening. Either Loretta comes with me or I don't go at all. Silence. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. Okay, he said finally. If it makes you feel more comfortable, we'll pick you up Saturday at 10 in the morning. Okay, I tried to sound carefree. How are the kids? How's Nancy? They're fine. He obviously wanted to end the conversation. I gotta run, Mom. Business at the salon. Sure, darling. I'll see you Saturday. I hung up the phone and took a deep breath. The first round was up to me. I'd insisted on Loretta's presence and Waylon had agreed, albeit reluctantly. Now I needed to prepare for the trip. Whatever my son had planned, I would be ready. It was getting dark outside the window. I turned on the light and went into the kitchen to make dinner, a simple scrambled egg and toast. It was nothing special, but I suddenly felt hungry. A real hunger that I hadn't felt since I discovered the insurance policy. Eunice and Loretta knew the truth. I had allies, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't alone. That I wasn't fighting alone against my own son who had decided my life was worth $500,000 and a house on Cherry Street. As I sat down to dinner, I caught my reflection in the window pane. A tired old woman with gray hair and deep wrinkles around her eyes. But there was a steely gleam in those eyes now. Waylon didn't know who he was messing with. I might have looked weak, but 65 years of life had taught me a lot, including that sometimes you have to fight for yourself, even if your opponent is your own flesh and blood. It was a clear Saturday morning. I sat by the window watching the driveway and thought through every detail of my plan. The phone on the desk read 9:30 Loretta would be here soon, followed by Waylon and his family. Today we'd go scouting out the nursing home. The doorbell interrupted my musings. Loretta stood on the threshold in a strict dress and with a bag over her shoulder. Ready? She asked, glancing around nervously. More than ready, I smiled. Come on in, we still have time. Waylon promised to be here at 10. We sat down in the kitchen and I poured us some tea. Loretta seemed tense, glancing at her watch. Miss Clampett, she began, lowering her voice even though we were alone. I've been thinking, maybe we should just go to the police, with the pictures of the pills, with the insurance history. I shook my head. Too little evidence. But I'm gonna get more today. What's on your mind? Loretta frowned. You'll see, I patted her hand. Don't worry, it's nothing dangerous. I just want to give Waylon a little nudge. See how he reacts. It's risky, she shook her head. My whole life is a risk right now, I sighed. But I have an advantage. Waylon doesn't know I know what he's planning, and I want to use that advantage. Waylon's car pulled up at 10 sharp, a big black SUV, leased from what I'd learned from his financial records. Now I realized he couldn't afford it. Everything on display, everything on credit. And to get out of debt, my son decided to get rid of me. Loretta and I went out on the porch. Waylon looked annoyed to see us together. Nancy sat in the passenger seat with a strained smile. The kids had stayed home. Studying for tests, Waylon explained. Mom, he gave me a brief nod, then turned to Loretta. And you must be the neighbor Mom was talking about. Loretta Mills? She held out her hand. A nurse at the city hospital. Waylon shook her hand without much enthusiasm. It was nice of you to accompany your mother, though it wasn't necessary. It's a pleasure, Loretta replied, not giving in to his coldness. Miss Clampett means a great deal to me. I hid a smile. Loretta wasn't going to let Waylon intimidate her. We got into the car, me and Loretta in the back seat. All the way to Tucson, Waylon talked about the advantages of the boarding house. State-of-the-art facilities, qualified staff, recreational programs. Nancy occasionally inserted a comment about how good it would be for me to be there. I listened in silence, nodding from time to time, and then, about halfway through, I began the first part of my plan. I don't feel so good, I mumbled, pressing my hand to my head. Dizzy. Loretta instantly turned to me. Miss Clampett, what's wrong? I don't know. I deliberately made my voice weak. I'm dizzy. And a little nauseous. Waylon glanced at me through the rearview mirror. Something flashed in his eyes. Satisfaction? Hope? But he quickly hid it behind a mask of concern. Maybe motion sickness? He suggested. Do you want to stop? No, go ahead. I closed my eyes. It's just weird. So weak all of a sudden. I felt Loretta tense up next to me. She didn't understand what I was doing, but she knew enough to be alarmed. I squeezed her hand lightly, letting her know I had everything under control. Do you have any chronic illnesses, Miss Clampett? Nancy asked with feigned concern. Maybe it's blood pressure? Just a little hypertension, Loretta answered for me. But it's usually well controlled with medication. You take your pills regularly, don't you, Miss Clampett? Yes, I nodded weakly. Every morning. I noticed Waylon and Nancy exchange quick glances. They knew I wasn't taking any medication other than blood pressure pills, and I wanted them to think I believed in the need for some other medication they were supposedly giving me. I continued to feign weakness and disorientation the rest of the way. When we arrived at Sunny Hills, I let Waylon and Loretta help me out of the car. I swayed as if I couldn't keep my balance. Why don't we postpone the visit? Loretta suggested. Miss Clampett is clearly out of shape. No, Waylon objected hastily. As long as we're here, let's have a look. Besides, there are medical personnel here if Mom gets worse. I let him hold my hand as we entered the building. It was a typical medical facility disguised as an apartment complex. Sterile hallways, the smell of disinfection, plastic plants in the lobby. We were greeted by the receptionist, a young woman with a professional smile. Waylon introduced us and explained the purpose of the visit. Of course, Mr. Clampett, she nodded. As we discussed on the phone, we have a great program for your mother. I noted that, as we discussed. So Waylon had already called here, already discussed it. This wasn't an orientation visit. This was preparation for my move. The receptionist started the tour. She showed me the rooms, the common areas, the dining room, the medical office, all the while talking about what a great atmosphere it was, what a caring staff. I kept playing the role of the disoriented old lady. Every now and then I stopped, as if I'd forgotten where we were going. I asked the same question a couple times. I saw Waylon nodding in satisfaction, Nancy stroking my shoulder with fake sympathy. Loretta didn't take a step away from me. I could sense her anxiety, but she didn't give away her emotions. Instead, she asked the receptionist clear, professional questions about medical care, staff qualifications, and emergency protocols. When we stopped at one of the empty rooms, potential apartments for Mrs. Clampett, as the receptionist put it, I decided to move on to the second part of my plan. Very nice, I said, looking around the tiny room with a bed, nightstand, and television. It was almost like a jail cell, only with curtains. There was an awkward silence. The receptionist laughed nervously. Mrs. Clampett is joking, she said. Not at all. I straightened up and looked around at everyone. The mask of the feeble-minded old woman was gone. I know exactly what this place is, a repository for unwanted old people, so their children can live in peace and not feel guilty. Mom, Waylon stepped toward me. You don't know what you're talking about. It's temporary fatigue. I know exactly what I'm talking about, I interrupted. And so do you, Waylon. Don't pretend you're looking out for my welfare. You want my house and my money. His face turned pale. Nancy made a squeezed sound like a sob. Miss Clampett, the receptionist smiled nervously. Perhaps you need a rest? We have a room for visitors. I don't need a rest. I turned to her. I need my son to stop trying to put me in here against my will and stop slipping me medication. There was dead silence. Loretta stood beside me, her hand on my shoulder, a silent support. Waylon looked like he'd seen a ghost. Mom, what are you talking about? His voice shook. What kind of medicine? The ones you put in my water when you think I can't see. I looked him straight in the eye. The ones that are supposed to make me weak and forgetful, to make everyone think I need nursing, so that no one will be surprised when I die. The receptionist shifted her gaze from me to Waylon and back again. Even Nancy looked shocked. That's absurd. Waylon tried to laugh, but it was unconvincing. Mom, you don't know what you're saying. This just proves that you need help. Really? I pulled out my cell phone. Then maybe you can explain what those drugs are in your desk, and why I have $100,000 worth of insurance in my name that I don't know anything about? I showed him pictures of the pills. His face turned ashy. You went through my stuff? And you forged my signature on the insurance policy, I parried. The receptionist cleared her throat. I think you should discuss this privately. If you'll excuse me. She practically ran out of the room. Nancy followed her, muttering something about needing to use the ladies' room. It was just the three of us, me, Waylon, and Loretta. My son looked at me with a mixture of fear and rage. You don't understand, he began. These pills, they're for me. I have trouble sleeping, anxiety. Lorazepam, quinapril, Donermil, I listed. Combined, they cause dementia-like symptoms, especially in the elderly. Right, Loretta. She nodded. Yes, the combination causes confusion, weakness, lack of coordination. Prolonged use can lead to organ failure. Waylon shifted his gaze from me to Loretta and back again. It was as if he couldn't believe his plan had been discovered. It's bullshit, he said finally. It's bullshit. You're making up stories, Mom. It's a sign of dementia. Then explain this. I showed him the picture of the insurance policy. Why did you take out an insurance policy on me without my knowledge? And why are you in so much debt that you'd kill your own mother for money? His face contorted. You don't know anything about my problems. He raised his voice. You think it's easy to support a family these days? Pay the mortgage, the kids' education, the bills, and you sit in your house, which you got for nothing, and you judge me. I'm not judging you for being in debt, I said quietly. I'm judging you for trying to kill me for them. I wasn't trying to kill you, he was almost shouting. I just wanted to. He paused. What? I wouldn't back down. You wanted to what? Make me sick enough to put me here? So I could die quietly and you could get the money and the house? Loretta stepped forward. Mr. Clampett, if you really did give your mother unduly prescribed medication, that's a very serious crime. As a medical professional, I have a duty to report. You're not reporting anything! Waylon turned sharply toward her. This is a family matter. Stay out of it. I'm much more family to her than you are, Loretta replied calmly, not backing down. And I won't let you hurt her. Waylon looked like he was ready to hit her. I stepped between them. That's enough, I said firmly. Here's what's going to happen, Waylon. We're leaving here now, me and Loretta. You're taking us home, and I don't want to see you after that. Mama, listen. No, you listen to me. I didn't let him finish. I have proof that you tried to poison me. Pictures of the pills, the insurance policy, and witnesses, Loretta and Eunice Tucker, former head nurse at City Hospital. If anything happened to me, anything, fire, robbery, accident, sudden illness, that evidence would go to the police. He looked at me as if I were a stranger. Maybe that was the way it was. Maybe we both never really knew each other. I didn't mean to kill you, he said quietly. Just make you weak enough to agree to a nursing home, to have the doctors certify that you needed constant care. And then what? I asked. When the insurance money would run out? He looked away, and that was more eloquent than any answer. Nancy returned, her eyes red with tears. Let's go home, she said quietly. Please. The drive back was completely silent. I sat next to Loretta, staring out the window at the cacti and sparse trees whizzing by. The Arizona desert had never seemed so desolate to me as it did at that moment. When we pulled up in front of my house, Waylon turned off the engine and turned to me. What now? He asked. Are you going to go to the police? No, I shook my head. I don't want Jason and Emily to know that their father tried to kill their grandmother. But I don't want to see you again, Waylon. Ever again. Mom, one more thing. I didn't let him finish. I'm changing my will. You won't get the house and everything else. His face contorted with anger. You can't do that. I can. I opened the car door. And I will. Goodbye, Waylon. Loretta and I got out of the car and walked toward the house. I didn't look back, but I heard the driver's side door slam. Waylon's footsteps behind us. You're going to regret this, he shouted. This is my house. My money. You can't just. I can. I turned to him. And if you don't get off my property right now, I'm calling the police. I'm sure they'll be interested to hear about the insurance policy and the unappointed medication. Loretta stood beside me, silent support. Waylon stared at us for a few seconds, his face contorted with impotent rage. Then he turned around, got in his car, and drove off with a squeal of tires. Are you okay? Loretta took my hand. Yeah. I was surprised at how calm my voice sounded. Strangely, I felt better than I had in years. It was like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. We walked into the house. I turned on the kettle, a simple, familiar action in a world that had just been turned upside down. You were amazing, Loretta said, shaking her head. I thought you were just pretending to be weak in the car, but then I realized it was part of your plan. I wanted him to feel confident, I explained, pulling out the cups. To think his plan was working, and then knock the ground out from under his feet. Do you think he'll give up? Loretta helped me with the tea. Or try to do something about it? I wondered. He's a coward, I finally said. Always has been. He can threaten, but he won't go for direct confrontation. Especially now that he knows I have proof. No, I think he'll stay away. Anyway, Loretta was serious. I'm gonna come by every day, make sure everything's okay. Thank you, dear. I squeezed her hand. But don't worry too much. Waylon's calculating. He won't risk his freedom for revenge. We drank our tea in silence. The sun was setting outside the window, coloring the Bisbee sky shades of red and gold. I thought about my son, about all the years I'd spent trying to be a good mother. How he'd grown up to be such a cold, calculating man. What are you thinking about? Loretta asked. About how life is full of irony. I smiled weakly. All my life I was afraid of being a burden to my son, and in the end, I was just a liability to his financial plans. You're not a liability, Loretta said firmly. And you're not a liability. You're a wonderful person who deserves respect and love. If your son can't see that, it's his loss, not yours. I felt tears coming to my eyes, but I held them back. No more crying. It was time to move on, without Waylon, without the constant fear of disappointment or burden. You're right, I said, lifting my cup. Here's to new beginnings. Loretta smiled and raised her cup. To new beginnings. And here's to you, Miss Clampett, the bravest woman I know. We clinked cups, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Not for a reconciliation with Waylon, that bridge was burned forever, but for a new life, one in which I would be free from the weight of unreasonable expectations and unrequited love. The phone rang, interrupting our moment. Nancy's number. Don't answer it, Loretta said. I shook my head. No, I want to know what she needs. I put it on speakerphone. Yes, Nancy? Martha. Her voice sounded strained. I need to talk to you, without Waylon. I looked over at Loretta. I'm listening. Not on the phone, Nancy said. Can I come over? Tomorrow morning when Waylon is at the salon. I wondered. Could I trust her? She knew about Waylon's plans, maybe even helped him. Okay, I said finally. But I won't be alone. I understand, she said quietly. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow. She hung up without waiting for an answer. Are you sure? Loretta asked. She could be just as dangerous as he is? I doubt it. I shook my head. Nancy was always weak. Did what Waylon said. But today, something was different. I saw it in her eyes when Waylon actually admitted to trying to poison me. Something broke. I think she wants to clear her conscience. Or to lure you into a trap. Loretta didn't give up. Maybe, I shrugged. That's why you'll be here when she comes. I'll call Eunice too. The more witnesses, the safer. Loretta nodded, though she still looked worried. I have to go, she said, looking at her watch. It's the night shift, but I'll be back in the morning before Nancy gets here. Thank you, dear. I walked her to the door. For everything. After she left, I went back into the kitchen and started washing cups. The simple, monotonous work helped me think. Today, I'd done what seemed impossible, confronted my own son, accused him of attempted murder, and won. He backed off, at least temporarily. But what's next? A life without Waylon and the grandchildren? A new will? Moving out of Bisbee? I didn't know the answers to those questions. All I knew was that today was the first step toward a new life. A life where I would no longer be a victim or a burden. A life in which I would determine my own destiny. Looking out the window at the starry Arizona sky, I felt strangely calm. Tomorrow would be a new day. And whatever my new life would be, it would definitely have more honesty and less fear than the old one. The morning was gray and dank, despite the usual Arizona heat. I sat on the veranda waiting for Nancy, my knees aching from the approaching rain. Loretta sat in a chair nearby, and Eunice, whom I'd invited for moral support, stood leaning against the railing. 3 women of different generations, united by one goal: to protect me from my own family. A bitter irony. She's late, Eunice remarked, glancing at her watch. Maybe she changed her mind, Loretta suggested. I shook my head. No, she's coming. I heard something in her voice yesterday. Something broken. At that moment, a car pulled into the driveway, not Waylon's big SUV, but Nancy's old sedan that she drove to work. She parked and sat motionless for a few seconds, as if gathering her strength before getting out. When Nancy walked up to the veranda, I was struck by her appearance. Usually impeccably dressed and coiffed, today she looked haggard. Dark circles under her eyes, her hair hastily pulled back into a ponytail, her clothes wrinkled. Martha, she nodded at me, then looked at my companions in surprise. I thought we were going to talk alone. Circumstances have changed, I replied calmly. This is Eunice, an old friend of mine. And Loretta you already know. Nancy swallowed nervously, but nodded. I see. May I sit down? I pointed to a vacant chair. Nancy sank down into it as if her legs had suddenly gone weak. I came to apologize, she began, looking at her hands. And to tell you everything. You deserve to know the truth. I'm listening, I said, showing neither anger nor sympathy. Nancy took a deep breath. Waylon is in debt. Huge debts. Not just mortgages and credit cards. He was taking money from people who shouldn't be in debt. We could have lost everything, the house, the business, even our safety. And you decided my life was an acceptable price for your financial salvation, I finished for her. Nancy flinched but didn't deny it. I'm not proud of it, she whispered. At first it was just a matter of convincing you to move into a nursing home, sell your house, use the money to help us get back on our feet. But when you refused, Waylon became obsessed with insurance. And pills, I added. She nodded without looking up. He found out about them from a buddy who works at the drug company. Said they'd just make you more cooperative. But I saw him researching side effects, calculating dosages. It was no longer about just getting you to move. Eunice made a dismissive sound, but I gestured for her to keep quiet. Why didn't you stop him? I asked Nancy. She finally looked up, her eyes full of tears. I was afraid. Waylon. He'd changed over the years. Cold, calculating. Sometimes I don't recognize him. She paused. And to be honest, part of me wished you'd disappear from our lives. You were always more important to him than me or the kids. Even when he avoided you, you were still all he talked about how you criticized him, how you disapproved of his choices. I raised my eyebrows in surprise. I'd never criticized Waylon. On the contrary, I've always supported his decisions, even when I didn't agree with them. Nancy grinned bitterly. He lives in his own reality, created an image of a mother who is never satisfied, maybe to justify his own failures, or to avoid feeling guilty about the way he treats you. That's when a familiar SUV pulled into the driveway. Waylon. Nancy turned pale. He was following me, she whispered. I should have known. Waylon got out of the car and walked briskly toward the veranda. His face was a mask of cold fury. So that's where you are, he threw to Nancy, betraying me behind my back. Waylon, she stood up, holding out her hands pleadingly. I just wanted to make things right. Nothing needs fixing, he turned to me. Except your attitude, Mom. You can't just cut me out of your life. I'm your son, your blood. Everything you have, the house, the money must rightfully belong to me. I rose slowly, wincing at the pain in my knees. Come inside, Waylon, I said calmly. Let's talk like adults one last time. He hesitated, clearly not expecting such a suggestion. Then he nodded and followed me inside. The others came in too, no one wanting to leave me alone with him. In the living room, I pointed Waylon to the chair across from the couch where Loretta and Eunice sat. Nancy remained standing by the door, as if ready to run away at any moment. This is how it's going to be, I began, feeling a strange emptiness inside. I'm officially breaking off the relationship with you, Waylon. You are no longer my son, and I am no longer your mother. Legally, emotionally, in every way. You can't. I can, I interrupted him, and I'm doing it right now. I've already been to a lawyer to change my will. Neither you nor your children will get a dime. That was a lie. I hadn't been to the lawyer yet, but I was going to. And I didn't plan to disinherit my grandchildren completely. They were just children, victims of circumstance. But Waylon wasn't supposed to know that. His face contorted with rage. I'll sue. I'll prove that you're incompetent. I have proof. Your neighbors' accounts of your erratic behavior, your medical records. Fake records, Eunice intervened, which I'd be happy to expose in court as a former head nurse with 30 years of experience. Waylon was speechless for a moment, then turned to me. This is about them, isn't it? He pointed at Loretta and Eunice. They turned you against your own son, poisoned your mind. I almost laughed at the irony of his words. No, Waylon, it was you who tried to poison me. And not just my mind, but my body. I've documented everything, the pills, the insurance policy, your financial problems. I've got photos, notes. Eunice, Loretta, my lawyer. If anything happens to me, anything from an accident to sudden illness, that evidence will go to the police. And you'll be tried not for fraud or attempted forced placement in a nursing home, but for murder. His face turned pale. You don't understand, Mom. He changed tactics, his voice almost pleading. I'm in a desperate situation. These people, they're no joke. They could hurt me, Nancy, the kids. Then you should go to the police, I replied. But my life is not a bargaining chip in your financial games, and don't try to soften me up. We both know you only want money, not my love or care. That's not true! He slammed his fist on the armrest. I love you! You're my mother! I want you to go away, I continued. And never come back. Never call. Don't try to contact me through other people. If you see me on the street, cross the street, you're dead to me. And the children? He asked quietly. Jason and Emily are dead to you too? It was a low blow and he knew it. I loved my grandchildren despite their coldness lately. It's their choice, I answered, feeling my heart clench. When they're adults, if they want to reconnect, my door will be open. But I won't invade their lives against your will, and I won't use them as weapons in our war, as you've used them all these years, turning them against me. Waylon stood up, his shoulders slumped. You'll regret this, he said, but there was no threat in his voice, only weariness. When you're all alone, when there's no one to take care of you. His words hurt more than I wanted to admit, because there was some truth to them. What will happen to me in 5, 10 years, when my health finally fails, when I can't take care of myself? I have people who take care of me, I said, pointing to Loretta and Eunice, hoping my voice sounded more confident than I felt. As long as they need you, Waylon replied with a bitter chuckle, or until they're tired of dealing with an old woman. Loretta wanted to object, but I stopped her with a gesture. Go away, Waylon, I said tiredly. Just go. He looked at Nancy. Let's go. She hesitated. Waylon, maybe we should— Come on! He shouted, and she flinched but moved obediently toward the door. She turned around on the threshold. I'm sorry, Martha, really sorry. I nodded, not trusting my voice. They left, and we heard the engine start, the rustle of tires on gravel, and then silence. Are you okay? Loretta asked, sitting down next to me. No, I answered honestly. And I don't think I ever will be, but I did what I had to do. He's not coming back, Eunice assured me, but there was no certainty in her voice. Maybe, I shrugged. Not anytime soon, anyway. My threats with evidence and the police scared him. But I'm not fooled. This isn't the end, just a truce. We spent the rest of the day together, but the conversation didn't flow. Too much had been said, too much emotion. By evening, Eunice had left, but Loretta stayed, insisting on sleeping in the guest room. I didn't mind. The thought of being alone in an empty house was unbearable. At night, I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling, thinking about Waylon's words, that I'd be alone, that Loretta and Eunice would never replace my family, no matter how awful that family was, that I would never see my grandchildren again. Maybe Waylon was right, and I would regret my decision, but I had no other choice. The next week, I did see a lawyer. I included Loretta in my will not out of gratitude or affection, although I did appreciate her care, but for practical reasons. Someone had to take care of my affairs when I was gone, and that someone certainly couldn't be Waylon. I left Jason and Emily a part of the inheritance too, not right away, but when they turned 25, and only if they came to me on their own, without their parents' involvement. A small hope for a future reconciliation that I couldn't give up, despite everything that had happened. The next months passed in a strange daze. I continued to live my life as I had before, cooking, cleaning, shopping. Loretta stopped by almost every day, but I could see that her concern wasn't as genuine as it used to be. Her life went on. Work, friends, some new boyfriend she talked about with a twinkle in her eye. Gradually, her visits became less frequent, shorter. I didn't blame her. Young people have their own lives, their own interests. I was grateful for every minute she gave me. I'd only heard about Waylon from the neighbors. They said he'd sold the house, that the family was moving to Phoenix, that the car dealership was for sale too. Apparently, the financial problems were serious. Sometimes, sitting on the porch in the evenings, I imagined what might have been if things had turned out differently. If Waylon had really loved me and not my money. If I could reach out to him, help him be a better man. If I had a real family instead of people bound only by blood and obligation. But those thoughts led nowhere. The reality was that I was an old woman, rejected by my own son, with an uncertain future and a limited present. Yet I didn't regret my decision. Better solitude than a life of fear. Better the truth, however bitter, than the illusion of familial well-being. One day, on one of her rare visits, Loretta asked, "Do you regret your decision about Waylon?" I looked at her. Young, beautiful, full of life, so different from me. Do I regret losing my son? Every day, I answered honestly. But do I regret that I protected myself, that I stopped pretending everything was okay? No, never. She nodded, not quite understanding, but trying. I heard they moved to Phoenix, she said carefully. Started a new life. Good, I replied. And it was partly true. I didn't want to hurt Waylon. I just wanted him out of my life. What about you? Loretta asked. Have you thought about moving? Maybe closer to downtown? Or an apartment with an elevator? It's getting harder and harder for you to climb the stairs. It was a truth I tried to ignore. My knees ached more and more, my back too. The house that had once seemed so cozy was getting too big for a lonely old woman. Maybe, I said uncertainly. Someday. We sat for a while longer, talking about nothing. When Loretta left, promising to come back in a couple days, I was alone on the veranda. The sun was setting, coloring the Bisbee sky a dark red. I thought about the past, the future, the strange irony of life. Waylon wanted to kill me to get money and freedom. In the end, he lost both, and I was left alive but alone. Which one of us won in this terrible game? Probably no one. And yet, as I watched the sunset, I felt a strange calm. I had survived. I had protected myself. And even though my life wasn't filled with joy or meaning, it was mine. No one else was deciding for me, manipulating me, trying to destroy me. It wasn't a happy life, but it was a life on my terms. And in my 65 years, that was the only thing that mattered.